All right, so what we're going to do here is a spinner mayfly. A spinner is basically a male, or I guess it can be a female as well. But after they've mated and she's laid eggs, or um, he's done mating, that's kind of the end of their life cycle, and so they die. And so a spinner just kind of means that their wings go flat out to the side, kind of draw back, and they're basically in a dead limp position, which makes them easy targets for trout, right? Um, so one of the first things, actually, let's do this. Let's start with the thread. Getting ahead of myself. I do that. So I'm going to start with some uni thread 8/0 and iron gray. The hook I have in the vise is a size 14 times 1 long dry fly hook. And what I want to do is I want to start back in the third position. Or you can say I want to have basically 3 bodkin widths back behind the eye. The whole front part of this is going to be thorax, wings, head. And the back part of this is just going to be your standard mayfly tail, but we're not going to add anything fancy, no ribbing, no anything like that. It's meant to be a quick, easy tie. And of course, I'm going to take forever explaining it to you because that's how I do it. But I want to cover the bases. So you can use different things for tails here. You'll see people use moose mane. Moose mane works good for mayflies, and not just a spinner, but any mayfly. Moose mane, you could use deer hair. You can use, like we're going to use some pheasant tail. You can use fibbits or paintbrush. Get a nylon paintbrush and color it. So anyway, the first thing we want to do is we want to take our thread back to right about the hook point. Stop yakking and get to the fly, right? And we're going to put in a dubbing loop. And I'm going to raise that dubbing loop to the top side. So I've got it just like so. And now I'm going to wrap this guy in back to the barb. Okay, I've got a little clip out back. I'm going to clip him too, just to help keep him out of my way for the time being. We're going to use him up pretty quick. If you've watched a couple of the other series in the Mayfly videos, you already know what we're about to do with that. If not, then we'll show you what we're going to do with that. So next, what you want to do is on my pheasant here, or any of your tailing material, you can really get what you want. But if you want the 3-prong approach for a mayfly tail, a lot of mayflies have a 3-prong tail. You can do it with a double tail. Some mayflies, kind of like the Quill Gordon, they got 2. I think it's the Quill Gordon I'm thinking of. Anyway, so we want to take 3 fibers and pull them directly off to the side. And we're going to pull the stem away from the fiber, not the fiber away from the stem. Whoop, I'm knocking stuff over here. Next, we're going to have all this kind of curlicue geef stuff off the back, and we want to trim that out. So what we want to try to do, as much as possible, is keep these feathers in alignment so that just like they would have come off the stem. And we need a distance. And so for these mayflies have typically have pretty long tails. And so I'll very often go from the front of the hook eye to the back of the bend, or just past that. Now, I'm going to line that up directly over my thread and transfer the distance to my left hand, my left thumb, left index. And I'm just going to put a wrap in and make sure that it's sitting on top, kind of like so. So in the previous videos, I've shown you how to tie this dubbing loop in from the front side. So on this one, I'm going to do it from the back side. So when we turn this guy over, you'll see how these, kind of get it there you go. You can see how these are kind of separated, and we want to keep that separation, and that's what we're going to use the dubbing loop for. So I want to keep this dubbing loop open, and I'm going to let's see if I can turn it just enough so you can see it. On my far side, I'm going to bring the far part of that dubbing loop in between the center and the far tail. And on the near side, I'm going to do the same thing, just between the center And the near side tail. Oh. Am I seeing that correctly? It's lifting. And we're just going to gently pull that dubbing loop forward so that it is split the tail here and here. So again, one on the far side, one on the near side. And next what I'm going to do, so the more you pull and play with this, the more it's going to lift and elevate. And we want to kind of keep this down, so you can just kind of gently kind of collect everything, lay it down right on top of the hook shank. You can kind of press to keep everything in place if you need to. And I'm just going to put a single wrap over for the moment. Now for me, since I tie goofy footed, my close side here wants to slide down. If you tie the normal way and wrap the opposite way that I do, it'll often be your far side that wants to come down. But you want to try to get those straight on there. And then we can take a few more turns coming forward, adjusting it as needed. And you can add a drop of glue here if you're having a hard time keeping them open, so that we have those 3 prongs open and somewhat parallel with the hook shank. As you work your thread forward, you can tighten down on it and really start to lock it in. Now this stuff is going to get in your way, and you can really, quite frankly, you can trim all this out if you want, or what I normally do is I just trim the dubbing loop out just to help with the symmetrical aspect of the body. I'll leave the pheasant tail in until I get back to the original tie-in point up front here, and then I'll trim that out. Just kind of helps build up some beef underneath, and you don't have to add the extra dubbing later. Alright, so next we're just going to take our thread and go right on back to the back. Now you'll kind of notice how there's already a little elevated or bump right here typically. So as you bring your thread up onto this bump, that's going to crunch everything down, and this is going to raise in the back. So you've got to be a little cautious as you do it, but you just kind of come in and do one slow turn at a time. And if you go slow, usually you can get it from doing that too bad and over tightening. If you need to tighten, I usually at this point I'll tighten up to help keep all this in line. If you tighten down, it usually puts force on the top of the feathers, which shoots them up. So if you pull up, your force is on the bottom of the shank where your tailing is not. And again, you can glue here if you need to. Next, just get some dry fly dubbing. What I've got here is some superfine Calibatus. I'm sorry, it's not Calibatus. It's no, it is. It's Calibatus color. Dry fly dubbing, and I'm going to get some out. And with the superfine dubbing, normally, kind of like it is here, all these fibers are pretty much in line with one another. So we don't have to work this too much. If you're using a different kind of dubbing and it's getting kind of squirrely, where you've got your dubbing's kind of shooting off in different directions, you can correct that by just pinching the dubbing, pulling away, and then realigning it by laying it right back on top. I don't know if you guys can see that very well. Right back on top. Pinch, pull, realign right on top until you have your dubbing running in the same direction, same general direction. It's not going to ever be perfect. So I'm going to start by giving a few twists of my dubbing onto my thread here. And you want to have a pretty slim profile. What I usually tell people is, let's see if I can find one. I can if I just trim my fingernails. I can't grab it. I'll get it. I'm coming. I should have had it prepared. So if you have like a sewing needle, right? This one's kind of large. But if you compare it to the dubbing noodle on a smaller fly should be a little smaller than this large sewing needle. On the smaller sewing needles, it should be about the same size. There's also like push pins too, which is what I thought I was actually getting. But there's like a sewing push pin, you know, that like mom or grandma used to have hanging around. There's one. These aren't quite so thick. So you want to have something that's about comparable to just like a little sewing push pin. And that's a good way to gauge your dubbing in general, let alone a mayfly. And the less you use, you'll hear people say less is more. That's just a good way to gauge that. So anyway, to start it, I'm just going to do one wrap over. Now you can kind of pull down and tighten my dubbing up. And what this has done is it's actually caught all the dubbing and kind of collected it, so that as I work forward, I can take more control over the positioning of the dubbing. Now you'll notice I got a bunch of this stuff hanging out the back, and I typically do that just to make it easier to pull on or put off. That's a little bit larger than what I normally have hanging out the back, but it makes it easier to, not this much I got to avoid stuff, but it does, having a little hang out the back makes it easier to take away or add more seamlessly and as needed. So if you have a little extra on there and you need a little bit more, you can just twist down. If you need to take it away, you can just pull it off. So what we're looking to do here is just build a taper, or like a little cigar shape, as it were. And we're just going to taper this guy forward to where we started. So now that I'm here, I can just pull all of that up. And since there's so much of it, I'm going to put a couple wraps in just to capture it. Now you can actually just trim it out. That was way more than I needed. But we're going to need some more of this dubbing here in just a minute. So what I was originally talking about, so we're going to use CDC for the wings. A lot of the times they'll use poly yarn or whatever. That's cool, it works, but CDC is highly floatable. So when you're going through your CDC, oftentimes you'll find feathers that look like this, and you hate to waste it because CDC is kind of expensive, right? So you can usually find a pair that is just kind of all cattywampus like that, right up here at the tips, and that can actually work really, really well for what we're trying to do. So the spinner mayfly, right, is going to have its wings shot off to the sides like this, and not in an upright position like this. So this is a good way to use these up. And you can totally do that. You do it the same way we do it if we were using just some good CDC. Lining the tips up. You can also double this up. And what I mean here is you got to do it in 2 steps, but you can use these crooked wings for like an underwing. And then you could use the good CDC on top for like an overwing. The more CDC that you have on there, the more floatable it's going to be. It's going to stay afloat a lot longer. There's no doubt. So you can double it up using these spent wings, or but this kind of crooked CDC for your spent wings. It's definitely a little more tricky, but you can do it. And you do it the same way, except I just want to roll on you. So you do it by just lining your CDC up back to back, and you want to try to get as tip to tip as possible. Same thing you do if these are good wings, right, or good CDC, or I shouldn't say good CDC, but not bent CDC. And you can actually do this either way. You can start from the top and bring the concave side down, or you can flip it over and have the concave side towards the hook point. But what we can do is, still getting over a little bit of a cold here. We're going to strip off the back just like so. We're going to place this right on top, and I'm going to put just 2. I'm going to choke up on my thread there. I'm just going to put 2 loose wraps over. Okay, and we're going to pull. And the distance we're looking to have is about the length of the hook shank from the barb to behind the eye of the hook. Something about like that. You get a couple in there, or you get to your distance, you put a couple, you put a couple extra wraps in. Take it towards the back, towards your dubbing, so that you have those. And you want to be able to find them so that they can be separated. So you can use all of this for your wing right here, even though it's all bent and cattywampus and out of shape and all that. And these make great mayfly wings. I mean, if you think about it, these mayflies, they're dead. Sometimes the female will eat part of the male's wings, and we can use all that. So you want to take the near side, draw it back, put a wrap over, so it's sitting off to the side just like so. You can also use oiler puffs here. It's a little more difficult, but you can definitely use an oiler puff to make these wings. So you got something kind of like that, right? And we don't need to get crazy here. And if you wanted to, you could just go ahead and come right back to some nice CDC or a second set of CDC. And it's getting crazy. Normally I just use the one though, just for reference, but I figured I'd just show you that you can use two here. But again, normally I just use the one because if it goes under a little bit, it's even kind of all the better, really. You know, dead bugs don't float forever. Put 2 or 3 wraps in. Same thing when I pull them forward to about the same distance. I'm going to take 2 or 3 wraps to the back. Split my wings off, or side to side. So I'm going to do my near side again. Put a wrap over. Then, while my thread's still in the down position, I'm going to pull these wings back and come from the front side to the back and over. So it's split it all open just like that. And wrap it again, wrap to the back. Just like so. And again, I typically just use one pair. Doubling it up on the CDC. And you can also change colors here too. So if like you want to use like a black and white or a gray and yellow or something, whatever the color is to match your mayfly hatch, you can totally use that to kind of get that effect of the wing. So next what we're going to do is we're going to come back to our dubbing because we want to cover this thorax up. So I'm just going to get my dubbing. Do the same process. And you just want to make sure that underneath that your dubbing reconnects with that, or your thorax dubbing reconnects with the abdomen dubbing. And if it's a little bit off or a little bit big, don't worry about that too much. I wouldn't have it overly large, but a little bit's okay. All right. Yeah, I thought I was going to pull that. Apparently not. So, okay. So next, we're going to draw all of this to the back. Both sets of the CDC, we're going to draw to the back. I'll do it from the side so you can kind of see. You're going to have some stuff sticking out the front, and that's okay. And we're going to start wrapping right behind those wings. So we're going to jump our thread forward, and we're going to wrap back into them. And if after you do that a little bit, they're going to kind of hole open like so. To kind of fine-tune it, you can do one wrap at a time to collect as much as possible. Since this, CDC is kind of it's a sparse and sporadic type of fiber, you can do something like that. You just want to try to keep these guys on top. And believe it or not, we are almost done. I know it's pretty crazy for one of my videos. Usually my videos are super long. I just want to make sure you guys get the flavor and understand what we're shooting for here. So just like so. There's our wings. Next, we're going to take the back of all this CDC and we're going to draw it forward and over the top, right up top here. Now, if you do it this way, you may still have a little bit of a thread gap there, which I don't mind so much. I don't think it makes a whole hell of a lot of difference personally. But you can also come back in before you pull this over for the wing case, and put a little dubbing on the front side. So we'll do that just to show you. You can just kind of pull it back and dub right here, just to kind of make things look a little neater. The dubbing in some cases can really help hold those wings back in the position that you want. They can also kind of interfere with things too, so you just want to be careful. So now we're going to pull this over the top, just like so. And once you kind of have it right over the top, we'll put a couple of loose turns in. That's can kind of be the tricky part, because we need to build a head right behind that eye. I got all the stuff in the way. So you can see where my thread is sitting right behind that eye. So what I'll do is I'll lift up. I'll literally lift that thread up. As you can see, it's like it's totally slack here. And I'll kind of pull down and set it where I want. And then when I have that, I'll jump my thread to the front and put some wraps in the front, so that it holds over the top just like so. That's kind of the that's really the only tricky part to that fly, using this CDC and or this much of it. It's not so bad if you just use the two CDC feathers like I normally do. So you can kind of collect everything, and then we can just build our little mayfly head. The one thing you don't want to do is put too big of a head there. Mayfly heads are pretty small, and you're just being counterproductive to the buoyancy of the fly with all that extra thread. Although with 4, not so big of a deal. So I do kind of use my scissors to come in right along the front part of this, and I'll use the hook eye, a down hook eye, as the gauge for the angle that I want. And I'll just kind of wrap right back on top of that to make sure that it's all tied in. Yep, I knew that was going to slip out. See, I start yakking, I wasn't paying attention. So now my head's bigger than I want it to be. I was talking about make sure you keep that small head, and then I didn't realize I didn't have it tied in all the way. That's all right. It is what it is. With 4, it's not going to be as big of a deal. With 2, it can kind of be a big deal as far as buoyancy is concerned, or longer buoyancy is concerned. So there you go. While everything's out of the way, just to make sure, you can come in and glue all that. See, the head was supposed to be small, but now it's big. That's okay. There's worse crimes than a mayfly head that's just a tad too big. Plus, you can see where it kind of came out the back and split off right there. You can leave that in if you want. Look, man, no fly is perfect, right? So there you go. There's how to do 4, well, CDC spinner. I just said that wrong, I think. A CDC wing spinner. This one I just happen to use 4, just to kind of give you a flavor of what you can do. Normally, actually, what they look like here is when I tie them is just this guy here. Get that cleaned up so you can see it. But normally when I tie them, I've just got the 2 wings on there, just like that, with a smaller head. And this is actually plenty. You don't actually have to do all that extra work to getting all those extra CDC feathers in there, or the extra 2. This one's definitely more buoyant than this one. But again, these things, they tail underneath the water and go under. So there you go. There's some different ways to use up CDCs that are not so desirable. Your crooked CDCs, kind of like that. They're kind of expensive for a lot of people at, $4 a bag. And if you get half of them have bent wings, which I've gotten before, I know a lot of people kind of look at it and say, well, what am I supposed to do with this? Well, that's one thing that you can do with it, is use them on spinner wings, just to give it some extra buoyancy, just like so. My head's too big. That's all right. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. I would totally appreciate that. You can always subscribe to the channel too, and click the bell for future notifications on when new videos come out. You can also check us out over Fly Tying for Beginners. Answer the questions. That's your golden ticket in. We do all kinds of fun stuff over there, and we got a great group. So make sure you join us over there if you haven't, and you found this video and you're not part of the fly tying classes, which is what this video is for, is part of the fly tying classes we do over there for free. So other than that, happy tying, and we'll see you next time. Take care.